What would you do if you found out your wife was sleeping with her boss? Most men would scream, throw punches, or pack a bag. I didn't. I did something Gavin Hartwell never saw coming. While he was busy stealing my wife, I quietly stole his. And when he finally realized it, when everything he built started collapsing under him, I looked him in the eye and said, "She's amazing, Gavin. Better than you ever deserved." But you don't get to that moment without first surviving the night your entire life explodes at 2:47 a.m. A buzzing phone, 8 words, and a marriage turning to ash. Stick with me and hit that subscribe button, because this story only gets darker from here. That night, it was the sound that did it. My phone was on the nightstand, face down, but the vibration wasn't mine. Melissa's screen lit the room with that cold blue glow slicing through the dark. It was 2:47 a.m., the kind of hour where nothing good ever shows up. Most nights, I ignore her late-night work stuff. I've always told myself, she's busy, don't be that guy. But something in my chest tightened, heavy and sharp. Call it gut instinct. Call it the last warning shot before my life blew apart. I picked up her phone. 1 preview line, 8 words. Can't wait to feel you again tomorrow. G. My mouth went dry. I opened the thread. At the top of the screen, the name hit harder than the message. Gavin. Work. Work. Like that label could make it respectable. My heart started slamming in my ears, but the rest of me went numb, like my body stepped out of the room and left me there alone with the truth. I set the phone back exactly where it had been. Then I lay on my back, staring into the dark, listening to my wife breathe softly beside me, and realizing I wasn't her partner anymore. I was her cover story. I didn't sleep after that. I just lay there, eyes open, watching cracks appear in memories I used to trust. It was like my brain hit rewind on 20 years and started pausing on all the scenes I hadn't wanted to look at too closely. The board meetings that always ran late, the way her tone changed when she talked about Gavin, how his drive put mine to shame. The calls that died the second I walked into the room, followed by, "It's just work, Nathan, relax." The new lingerie that never showed up in our bedroom still had the tags on when I did the laundry. I told myself she was saving it for the right moment. Turns out, I just wasn't the moment. And then the sentence that wouldn't stop echoing in my skull. Gavin says men like you are a dime a dozen. Men like me. The ones who keep the lights on, fix what's broken, trade their dreams for a mortgage and insurance. Lying there in the dark, I finally got it. She hadn't just cheated on me. Somewhere along the way, my own wife had decided I was replaceable. And that hurt worse than the text. Morning hit like nothing had happened. Sunlight in the kitchen, coffee brewing, Melissa humming some pop song off key while she moved around like it was just another Tuesday in our nice, normal suburban life. I sat at the table, hands wrapped around a mug I wasn't really drinking, watching her. The same woman whose phone had just burned our marriage to the ground a few hours earlier was making toast. She didn't look at me when she said, "I'll be late again tonight. Big presentation for the board." Third one that week. I studied her face. The smile was a little too bright, the eyes a little too busy avoiding mine. She knew something was off. She just didn't know how much I knew. When I didn't respond right away, she finally turned, annoyed. "Some of us actually care about advancing our careers, Nathan." There it was, the knife, twisted with a smile. I swallowed what I wanted to say. "Right," I told her quietly. "Good luck with your presentation." She grabbed her bag and walked out the door like our life wasn't a lie. And sitting there in that bright, spotless kitchen, it hit me. If I stayed the same man, nothing was ever going to change. I made it through the morning on autopilot, answered emails, fixed a server issue, nodded through small talk. My body went through the motions while my mind replayed that text over and over like a bad song. Around lunch, my phone buzzed. "Derek, you sound like you need a drink." He didn't know anything yet, but somehow he knew enough. Monroe's Tavern sits on High Street, all dark wood and old neon, the kind of place that smells like spilled beer, fried food, and 1,000 confessions. Daytime, it's mostly empty, just a couple of regulars and a game on mute. I walked in, and Derek took one look at my face. He didn't ask, just reached for the good bottle, poured heavy, slid the glass across the bar. "All right, man," he said softly. "What happened?" I stared at the whiskey for a second, feeling my throat tighten. Saying it out loud would make it real, would make me the guy whose wife— "My wife is having an affair," I finally said. The words scraped their way out, ugly and raw. Derek blinked, once. No jokes, no cliches, just a slow nod, jaw tight. "Okay," he said. "Start from the beginning." And for the first time since 2:47 a.m., I wasn't alone with it anymore. Derek let the silence hang for a second, then asked, "Who?" I stared into my glass. "Her boss, Gavin Hartwell." He swore under his breath. "That Gavin Hartwell?" I frowned. "You know him?" "Not personally," he said, grabbing a bar rag, more to have something in his hands than anything else. "But you can't live in Columbus and not know the type. Big shot CEO, magazine covers, charity galas. Thinks the sun rises because he signs checks." He hesitated, then added, "I've heard things, Nate. Guy's got a reputation. Likes his mentorships with married employees, quiet hotel bars, conferences that aren't really conferences." Each word landed heavier than the last. So it wasn't some tragic love story. It wasn't Melissa falling for her soulmate. She was just another notch on a very expensive headboard. A disposable thrill for a man who already had everything. There's a special kind of humiliation in realizing your wife didn't even ruin your life for something real, just to be another one of his power trips. The anger settled in then, cold, focused. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was curious. And that's when I started digging. I told myself I was done looking, that I'd seen enough, that knowing about the text and the rumors was already more than any husband should have to swallow. But once you've seen the crack in the wall, you can't unsee it. You start noticing every other one. A couple nights later, I was doing laundry, because that's what mediocre, steady husbands do, when I pulled Melissa's blazer out of the hamper. The smell hit me first. Not my cologne. Not hers. Something sharper, expensive, the kind you smell on guys who leave their cars running out front while a valet grabs their keys. Right there on the collar, a faint smear of lipstick. Dark, wine-colored. Melissa never wore lipstick like that. Ever. My stomach dropped, but my hands kept moving. I checked her travel emails. Work trips that didn't line up with company events. Credit card charges for hotels downtown even though we live 20 minutes away. Rideshare receipts from the same address as Gavin's condo. By the time I closed my laptop, my hands had stopped shaking. This wasn't a suspicion anymore. It was a fact. The question wasn't, is she cheating? It was, what am I going to do about it? Once you know the man sleeping with your wife has a name, you start typing it. Gavin Hartwell. Google didn't disappoint. There he was on every business site in Ohio, sharp suit, perfect smile, that I own the room posture, posing with oversized checks at charity events, shaking hands with politicians, talking about values and culture like he invented them. And in picture after picture standing just off to his side was her, Isabella Hartwell. Izzy. Tall, composed, the kind of beauty that doesn't need to try. Simple black dresses, hair pinned up, pearls instead of flash. But it was her eyes that got me. You can't fake distance in the eyes. In shot after shot, Gavin leaned forward, soaking up the spotlight, and Izzy stood half a step back, smiling for the camera but looking like her mind was somewhere else. Not angry, not dramatic, just tired. Empty in a way I suddenly recognized. I stared at a photo from some spring gala, his hand on her waist. Her eyes focused on something far past the lens. Did she know? Was she numb? Or just done caring? For the first time, I wondered if I was the only husband bleeding in this story. I didn't have to wait long to find out if she knew. 3 days later, the answer found me. I was at my desk, pretending to care about a network report, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. No name, just 10 digits and a preview line that froze me in place. Your wife and my husband. We need to talk. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. I opened it. Your wife and my husband. We need to talk. Maple and Grind Cafe, Short North. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Come alone. Izzy Hartwell. I leaned back in my chair, just staring at her name. This could be anything. A setup, a trap, some twisted attempt at damage control. Or it could be exactly what it looked like. Another person who'd had their life blown apart by the same two people. For a few minutes I argued with myself. Good men don't sneak around. Good men don't meet other people's wives in secret cafes. Then I remembered the text at 2:47 a.m. The blazer, the lipstick, the way Melissa looked right through me in our own kitchen. The truth was simple. I was already in hell. What else was left to lose? I typed back one word. Okay. I had no idea that message would change everything. I got to Maple and Grind early and picked a table in the back where the light from the big window didn't quite reach. I didn't know what I was expecting. Tears, drama, maybe someone unstable. What walked in at 1:59 p.m. was none of that. She stepped through the door in a simple navy dress and a tan coat, dark hair pulled back, no flashy jewelry, just put together, controlled. Her eyes swept the room once, landed on me, and there it was, the same hollow tiredness I'd seen in those pictures. "Nathan?" she asked. Her voice was calm, not shaky, not small. "Yes," I said, standing halfway, suddenly aware of my old jacket and coffee-stained shirt. She sat down across from me, folded her hands, and skipped every fake pleasantry most people hide behind. "I'm Gavin's wife," she said. "Izzy." Just like that. No sugarcoating, no denial. For a second we just looked at each other, two strangers tied together by the same betrayal. Then she reached into her bag, pulled out a thick manila envelope and set it between us on the worn wooden table. "This," she said quietly, "is what your wife and my husband have been doing." I hadn't even opened it yet, and my stomach was already in free fall. My fingers didn't want to touch it. That envelope sat there like a live wire. Part of me wanted to push it back and say, "I've seen enough." The rest of me knew that wasn't true. I opened it. The first photo was Melissa and Gavin walking into a downtown hotel, too close for just colleagues, her hand on his arm like it had never been on mine. Another shot of them at a restaurant, heads bent together over wine, one of them in his office, lights off, shades down. My chest burned, but Izzy wasn't watching my face. She was staring at the brick wall behind me, jaw tight, like she'd forced herself to stop reacting a long time ago. Behind the photos came printouts, credit card statements, hotel bills, charges for jewelry Melissa never wore at home. "He's done this before," Izzy said finally. "Yours is just the latest episode." The word episode stung more than I expected. "How long have you known?" I asked. "About Gavin?" she said. "Years. About Melissa? A few weeks." I looked at the pile of proof, then back at her. "You've been keeping all this waiting?" She met my eyes then, and there was steel under the sadness. "I've been planning," she said, "just waiting for the right partner." And suddenly it hit me. This wasn't just about my broken marriage anymore. I'd just stepped into a war that had been loading its gun for years. I sat back, the envelope open between us, my life scattered on the table in printed ink and glossy photos. "So, what do you want to do with all this?" I asked. Izzy didn't answer right away. She stirred her coffee, watching the swirl like she was deciding how honest to be. "Not me," she said finally. "We. We're in this together now, whether we like it or not." The word hit different. We. Up until that moment, it had just been me getting lied to, me losing sleep in a house that didn't feel like home anymore. She went on, calm and razor sharp. "Gavin's built an entire image around being the perfect CEO, the devoted family man. Melissa gets to be the brilliant, loyal wife at home and the star employee at work. They're playing the golden couple in front of an audience that eats it up." She lifted her eyes to mine. "What happens when we pull the mask off in public, when the same people they're performing for see what's really underneath?" I swallowed. "I'm just an IT guy. She's the wife of a man who lives on magazine covers. The pairing didn't make sense. Her idea scared the hell out of me, because it made sense." "The spring charity gala," Izzy said, like she was naming a battlefield. I frowned. "What about it?" "It's at Columbus Country Club next month. Board members, investors, press, half the city's old money." She gave a small, humorless smile. "Everyone who matters to Gavin's image will be there." I could almost see it as she spoke. Big ballroom, chandeliers, people in suits pretending they care about causes more than their own reflections. And you want to, what? Stand outside with signs? I asked. She shook her head. No, we go in together. She let that hang there. Gavin's wife, Melissa's husband, on each other's arm. My mind immediately supplied the whispers. Why is she with him? Where's Gavin? Where's Melissa? We won't expose them, Izzy continued. We'll let them expose themselves. All we have to do is be seen. They'll panic, they'll slip, and the people who need to see it will. I stared at her. You're talking about burning their whole world down in one night. I'm talking about telling the truth, she said, in the one room they can't afford to lose. Somewhere between that table and the door, I stopped being just a cheated husband and started becoming something else. We sat there in that little cafe, the wreckage of 2 marriages sitting between us in a manila envelope, and Izzy was somehow already 3 steps ahead. For this to work, she said, we need to look like we've moved on. I frowned. What does that even mean? She held my gaze. It means when people see us, they don't see 2 victims. They see a couple. She let the word breathe. Hand in hand at the gala. At a few places before that. Let them draw their own conclusions. You want us to fake a relationship? I asked. I want us to have a real alliance, she said. What it turns into later, a tiny shrug. We'll see. There it was, that gray line I'd never crossed in my life. I'd always been the guy who colored inside the lines, paid the bills, did the right thing even when no one was watching. Now the right thing wasn't clear anymore. The only thing that felt clear was this. Gavin and Melissa had written their story over our lives. Izzy was offering me a pen back. I heard myself say, okay. I said yes, not knowing what that yes would cost me. If you've spent most of your adult life in clearance rack suits, a real tux shop feels like another planet. Izzy texted me 2 days after the cafe. We need to get you ready. Next thing I knew, I was standing on a low platform in front of a mirror, some tailor pinning fabric while I tried not to look as out of place as I felt. I've never been the guy people stare at when he walks into a room. I'm the before picture, the dependable one, neutral background. But when the tailor stepped back and I saw myself in the fitted black tux, something in my chest shifted. The shoulders sat right, the lines were clean. I looked solid, like a man who belonged somewhere other than the corner of the room. Izzy studied me from the chair, head tilted. You don't look like a background character anymore, she said. It was a simple line, but it hit harder than any insult Melissa ever threw at me. On the drive back, city lights sliding over the dashboard, I caught my reflection in the passenger window. For the first time in a long time, I didn't see the safe option, or the guy who'll never go anywhere. I thought, maybe I'm not the loser she said I was. Once the tux was sorted, Izzy moved to phase 1, letting people see us. It started small. Coffee together at Maple and Grind on a Saturday morning. Her laughing at something I said, hand on my arm. A couple of Melissa's co-workers at the counter, doing a terrible job of not staring. Next week, we had a drink at a quiet bar in Short North where a few of Gavin's board buddies liked to lurk. Izzy knew exactly where they'd be. We walked in side by side, didn't hide, didn't explain. Just ordered, talked, left. We didn't post anything. We didn't say a word online. We just existed in the right places, in front of the right people. It didn't take long. One evening, Melissa came home tight-lipped and wired. I ran into someone today, she said, arms crossed. Apparently Gavin's wife has been seen out with some IT guy. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? I took a slow sip of my coffee, kept my voice even. We all move on in different ways, right? Her eyes flashed, but she didn't have the full picture yet. She still thought this was small, contained, personal. She had no idea how public this was about to get. The night before the gala felt like standing on the edge of a roof, staring down. I had the tux hanging on the closet door, shoes lined up, cufflinks on the dresser. Everything looked ready. I didn't. I walked through the house, the same rooms I'd painted, repaired, paid for. This place was supposed to be our safe spot, the reward for all the overtime and canceled weekends. Now every corner held some ghost of a fight, a lie, a moment I hadn't seen clearly enough. 20 years of my life, and I was only just learning how much of it had been built on sand. I texted Derek. "If this blows up in my face, you'll know why." He replied almost instantly. "You finally standing up for yourself isn't gonna blow up. Call me after." My phone rang a few minutes later. Izzy. "Big day tomorrow," she said. Her voice was calm, steady. "Remember, tomorrow isn't the end. It's just the beginning of you not letting them write your story." After we hung up, I stood in front of the mirror, looking at a man I barely recognized. I'd already lost my wife. I wasn't about to lose my dignity, too. And then the night of the gala finally came. Columbus Country Club looked like another planet. Perfect lawn, stone columns, valets in black jackets opening doors for people who'd never pumped their own gas. Inside, the ballroom glowed gold. Chandeliers, white tablecloths, waiters moving like they were on rails. This was Gavin's natural habitat. I stood near the entrance, tugging at my cufflinks, feeling like an intruder in my own tux. Then Izzy walked in. Conversation actually dipped for a second. She was in a deep emerald dress that made half the room stop mid-sentence. No flashy jewelry, just that same controlled grace I'd seen in pictures. Except tonight there was something new in her eyes. She came straight to me, like this was the most natural thing in the world, slipped her hand through my arm, and gave a small, polite smile to the people already staring. Whispers started immediately. "Is that Gavin's wife? Who's the guy? Where's Gavin?" We walked under the chandelier light, past clusters of people pretending not to watch us too hard. Izzy leaned in just enough for me to hear. "Phase 1 complete," she murmured. "Now we let them see us." And then I saw Melissa on his arm. There she was. Melissa, in a tight red dress that tried too hard, laughing up at Gavin like the cameras were on them, and they almost always were. Her hand rested on his arm, fingers curled just a little too familiar. For a second, I just watched. Then she saw us. I felt the exact moment her brain connected the dots. Her smile froze, then fell. The color drained from her face so fast it was almost impressive. Her eyes dropped to where Izzy's hand was linked through my arm, then snapped back to my face like she was hoping she'd misread the whole scene. She hadn't. Gavin turned to see what had spooked her. When he clocked Izzy standing beside me, his expression cracked. For the first time, Mr. Untouchable looked exposed, like someone had yanked his mask off in the wrong room. The noise in the ballroom didn't stop, but it changed. Conversations softened. People's bodies angled toward us without moving their feet. Phones appeared in hands, screens tilted low. 4 of us, standing in one invisible circle. 2 liars. 2 people who finally knew. Izzy's fingers tightened slightly on my arm. "Showtime," she whispered. Melissa got to me first. She practically dragged Gavin across the floor, heels clicking like gunshots on the marble, eyes locked on me like I'd crashed her wedding. "Nathan," she hissed, smile stretched tight for the audience. "What are you doing here?" For once, I didn't shrink. I let my eyes slide from her to Gavin, then to Izzy's hand resting on my arm. "Enjoying the gala," I said calmly. "With my date." You could feel the ripple go through the people close enough to hear. Izzy didn't miss a beat. She turned slightly, her voice just loud enough to carry to the small knot of board members and donors hovering nearby. "I'm sure you all remember my husband," she said, letting that word hang in the air like a verdict. "Gavin Hartwell." Gavin's jaw clenched. "Izzy, what is this?" he muttered. The fake charm was gone. His eyes were all calculation and panic now. Around us, conversations thinned out, then stopped. The band kept playing, but the real show was here. Phones came out, heads tilted, people pretending not to stare while staring hard. 4 of us, locked in a circle under the chandelier. And then Melissa made her first mistake. If she'd walked away, they might have survived the night. Instead, Melissa exploded. "How dare you humiliate me like this?" she snapped, voice too loud, too sharp for a room full of rich people trying to act civilized. A few nearby faces lit up with the kind of interest you only get when blood's in the water. I didn't say anything. Izzy didn't either. "You show up here with her? In front of us?" Melissa threw an arm back toward Gavin without even looking at him. After everything that's been going on between us, and there it was. Not rumors, not texts, not photos. Us. Out loud. In public. Izzy's mouth curled. Not into a smile exactly. More like satisfaction finally finding a place to land. Funny, she said lightly. You were perfectly fine humiliating your own marriage in private. A couple of board members nearby exchanged looks. One of them wasn't even pretending not to listen anymore. You could practically hear the HR department sharpening their pencils. Melissa realized, a second too late, what she'd admitted. Her hand flew to her mouth. I met her eyes. I don't think we have anything private left to discuss, do we? By Monday morning, the whole city would know. Gavin finally snapped out of his daze and grabbed for Izzy's arm like he still owned the rights to her. We're leaving, he hissed. She pulled back hard enough that a few people actually flinched just watching it. You lost the right to touch me, she said, voice clear and steady, when you started touching your employees. The sound in the room changed. You could actually hear the collective gasp, sharp little intakes of breath, followed by that low buzz of hungry whispering. Employees, not someone, not her. That word landed like a hammer on marble. I saw a couple of board members lock eyes. One of them mouthed HR to the other. A woman near the bar whispered, lawsuit, like she was already drafting the headline. Izzy didn't bother looking at Gavin again. She turned to me instead. Shall we? She asked, like we were just leaving a boring dinner. I offered my arm. This time it wasn't an act. It felt like choosing a side. We walked out of that circle and through the ballroom while the golden boy and his red-dress mistress stood in the middle of their own mess. Round one wasn't just over. We'd won it. By Monday, the hangover from that gala wasn't about alcohol. I was at my desk, halfway through my first coffee, when my phone lit up with Marcus's name, the guy I knew in IT over at Hartwell Holdings. You sitting down? He asked. Should I be? He snorted. Board called an emergency meeting first thing. HR's already in there. Words like hostile environment and power imbalance are flying around. Whatever happened at that country club, it made it back here fast. I leaned back, letting that sink in. What about Melissa? I asked. She's radioactive, he said. They've temporarily suspended her access to some systems. No meetings, no projects. People are talking, man. Whole building's buzzing. I pictured her, queen of big presentations, suddenly sidelined. Gavin, Mr. Culture and Values, having his own people whisper predator behind glass doors. For the first time since 2:47 a.m., the weight on my chest shifted. Not gone, but lighter. Like the damage wasn't just carved into me anymore. It was finally circling back to where it belonged. I thanked Marcus and hung up, staring at the wall for a long moment. It wasn't just a marital mess anymore. This had become a professional problem for them. And Gavin Hartwell was not the type to go down without swinging. Melissa came home that night looking like the party was over. No boss lady walk, no sharp heels announcing her arrival, just the front door opening slow, then closing with a soft thud. When she stepped into the kitchen, her makeup was smeared, eyes red, hair half fallen out of its usual perfect style. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. They suspended me, she said, voice shaking. Pending investigation. She spit out the corporate words like they were poison. I set my mug down. HR? She nodded, then her eyes filled with something uglier than tears. This is because of you, she snapped. You and that woman. You ruined my career. There it was again. Somehow she'd turned herself into the victim in a mess she started. No, I said, and my voice surprised me with how steady it was. Sleeping with your married boss did that. She froze. I've known for weeks, Melissa, I added. The texts, the hotel charges, the blazer. I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped pretending not to see it. For the first time since all this began, she didn't have a comeback. And for the first time, I wasn't the one on the back foot. Later that night, she tried to spin it. We were in the living room, the TV off, the house too quiet. It wasn't just about that, she said, arms wrapped around herself. You don't understand, Nathan. Gavin saw me. He believed in my ambition. He made me feel like I could actually be something. I let her finish. You traded our life for his status, I said. Let's call it what it is. Her eyes hardened. Our life? She shot back. You mean this safe little loop? Same job forever, same house, same everything? You don't take risks, you don't push, you're comfortable, mediocre. The old me would have argued, raised my voice, tried to change her mind. This version of me just looked at her. I showed up, I said quietly. Every day. I paid the bills. I fixed what broke. I was faithful. If that's mediocre to you, that's your problem, not mine. Something deflated in her then. Not remorse, just the realization that whatever hold she'd had on me was slipping. That night, she took a pillow and blanket and went to sleep on the couch. I lay in our bed alone, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time since 2:47 a.m., it felt more peaceful than painful. The next morning, I called a divorce lawyer. After I called the lawyer, the next call was to Izzy. We met back at Maple and Grind. This time, she looked tired. Not messy, not broken. Just like someone who'd finally stopped lying to herself and was paying the price for it. Dark circles, hair in a loose knot, blazer over a plain t-shirt instead of one of those polished dresses. How bad is it? I asked. She gave a short laugh. Gavin's in full damage control mode. Lawyers, PR, board members, golf buddies. He's calling everyone but a priest. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out another stack of papers. This one wasn't about me. Draft of the divorce filing, she said. Asset split, alimony, documentation of his affairs. She tapped it once. Phase 2. I flipped through. Dates, names, hotels. It was all there. This isn't just revenge, Nathan, she said quietly. Revenge is small. This is me taking my life back. My time, my money, my name. For weeks, I'd felt like the storm was happening to me. Sitting across from her, looking at that stack of legal TNT, I realized we weren't just surviving this anymore, we were steering it. Her phone lit up halfway through our coffees. Gavin. Izzy watched it ring once, twice, then slid her thumb across the screen and hit speaker. Isabella, he started, voice tight. We need to talk. We're talking, she said. He dropped the charm. This has gone far enough. I'll give you whatever you want. Money, the house, cars. Just stop whatever you're doing. Call off your little campaign. I felt my jaw tense at little campaign. And Nathan, Gavin added, venom now. He's a nobody, Izzy, an IT drone. You really think parading him around makes you look good? I opened my mouth, but Izzy beat me to it. Careful, she said, ice calm. That nobody has more integrity in his worst day than you've had in 20 years. Silence. You could almost hear his ego flinch. You're making a mistake, he snapped. Both of you. I have resources. I can make your lives. Also, she cut in, glancing at me, this conversation is being recorded. For the legal file. There was a sharp inhale on his end, then the line went dead. Izzy set the phone down, a small, satisfied smile on her lips. Gavin's next move, she said, is going to be even dumber. A few nights after that speakerphone performance, I was at the data center late, doing what I actually get paid for, keeping other people's systems from crashing. Fluorescent lights, hum of servers, the kind of quiet that lets your brain breathe. Then I heard dress shoes on concrete. I looked up and there he was, Gavin Hartwell in a suit that probably cost more than my car, but he didn't look like the guy from the magazines anymore. Eyes red, tie loosened, edge of desperation bleeding through the arrogance. We need to talk, he said. I swiveled my chair slowly. Pretty sure we don't. He ignored that. You think you know what game you're playing, but you don't. I had you looked into. He said it like a threat, like he was about to flip over my life the way his was flipping over. College gambling problem, he listed off. DUI that got scrubbed. Money you still owe your parents. You're not clean, Nathan. You're a mess in a cheap suit who got lucky. Something in me snapped, but not the way he wanted. I actually laughed. You investigated the wrong Nathan Colefield, I said. Watching his face shift from victorious to stupid in about 3 seconds was the best thing I'd seen all week. The laugh did it. His eyes went dark, the fragile control he'd been clinging to finally snapping. "You think this is funny?" he growled, stepping closer. "You think you can humiliate me and just walk away?" Before I could answer, he grabbed a fistful of my shirt and yanked me up out of the chair. For a second, I was close enough to smell the expensive whiskey on his breath, the panic under the cologne. "I can make your life hell," he hissed. "You're nothing. I will bury you. You and that—" "Careful," I cut in, keeping my voice low and even. "You're in a building with more cameras than a casino. Every angle, every hallway, including this one." He hesitated, eyes darting up toward the little black dome in the ceiling he'd probably never noticed before. Right on cue, one of the night security guys rounded the corner, slowing when he saw Gavin's hand twisted in my shirt. "Everything okay here?" he asked. Gavin let go like he'd been burned. "We're done," I told him. "You should go." He straightened his jacket, trying to rebuild the illusion on his way to the elevator, but it was too late. The building had seen him. The cameras had too. I called Izzy as soon as he was gone, told her everything. "That footage," she said, "just became Exhibit A. And that wasn't even the worst day for him. The story broke on a Thursday. I was halfway through my coffee when a link popped up in the group chat from Marcus. "You're gonna want to see this. Columbus Tribune. Byline, Patricia Whitmore." Headline in big black letters: "Power, Silence, and Predators. The Truth Inside Hartwell Holdings." I clicked. There it was. Years of whispered rumors laid out in clean, unforgiving paragraphs. Former employees talking about mentorship that came with strings attached, late-night texts, promotions that depended on saying yes, careers derailed when women finally said no. And in the middle of it all, Gavin Hartwell. Melissa showed up too, not as a victim, as the current protege, tied by name to suspicious expenses, hotel stays, jewelry, off-site strategy sessions. Social media lit up. People were furious. Clients started reconsidering relationships. Hartwell Holdings stock took a hit before lunch. I stared at the screen for a long time. I'd thought I'd feel nothing but satisfaction seeing him fall. And yeah, there was some of that. It felt right that the man who'd treated people as disposable finally had to stand under the same harsh light. But there was something else too. A dull ache for all the women who hadn't had a husband or an Izzy or a camera backing them up. It wasn't just my story anymore. It was the city's, and the board wasn't going to be able to ignore it. A few days later, Izzy texted me an address and a time. "If you want to see the end of it, come." It was a glass and steel office building downtown, the kind where power lives behind frosted doors. We sat in the back row of a boardroom we technically had no business being in, quiet, anonymous, watching the show. Gavin walked in with his lawyer, trying to wear his old confidence like a suit that no longer fit. The board members didn't stand. They didn't smile. They just opened folders. On the table, printed screenshots from the article, copies of harassment complaints that had gone missing years ago, HR summaries, financial reports, and, courtesy of the data center cameras, a still frame of Gavin with his fist in my shirt. They took turns. "Explain this expense. Explain this relationship. Explain this pattern." For once, there was nowhere to charm his way out, no gala crowd to play to. Just a long, polished table and people who suddenly realized he was a liability, not an asset. It didn't take an hour. "In light of these findings," the chairwoman said, "your employment is terminated for cause, effective immediately." No golden parachute, no soft landing. Gavin opened his mouth, then closed it again. Nothing left to say. As security escorted him out, Izzy leaned over, eyes on the now empty head of the table. 20 years of empire building," she whispered. "Gone in 20 minutes. For the first time since 2:47 a.m., I watched the man who'd thought he was above everyone else walk out like any other disgraced employee, and I realized the power balance had finally shifted. We didn't pop champagne. That night, after the board meeting, Izzy and I ended up at this small place off High Street. Dim lights, worn wooden booths, the kind of restaurant where the loudest sound is silverware on plates and low conversation. No toasts, no big speeches. Just two people who had watched the same man lose everything, trying to figure out what that meant for their own lives. We talked about Gavin for maybe 5 minutes. Then the conversation shifted, slowly, naturally, to us. To the years we'd both spent shrinking ourselves to fit inside someone else's story. To the trips we never took, the hobbies we dropped, the parts of ourselves we'd shelved just to keep the peace at home. At one point I caught my reflection in the window and said, half to myself, turns out rock bottom's a pretty solid place to rebuild from. Izzy smiled at that. Not the polite, controlled smile she wore at galas, but something softer. When our eyes met, it didn't feel like ally to ally anymore. It felt like two people standing on the far side of a fire, realizing they were still here. For the first time, this didn't feel like revenge. It felt like the start of a new life. News travels fast in corporate circles. It didn't take long for Gavin's fall to circle back to Melissa. With him gone and HR tearing through everything, there was no return to normal waiting for her. The promotion track vanished. Calls stopped coming. Emails from higher-ups went cold. Eventually, she took a lower-paying office job at a different firm. No title, no team, just another person in a cubicle answering to someone else. One night, she showed up at the house with that old, rehearsed softness in her voice. Maybe we could, give us another chance, she said. Start over. We've got history, Nathan. Once, that word, history, would have hooked me. Habit, familiarity, the fear of starting from zero at my age. This time, it didn't land. We're not us anymore, Melissa, I said. We're just two people who shared a house for a long time. That doesn't mean we still belong there. She stared at me like I'd switched languages. Then she nodded once, more angry than hurt, and left without slamming the door. The silence she left behind felt clean. 3 months later, the paperwork made it official. 3 months after that night in the boardroom, the dust finally settled. Both divorces wrapped in the same week. 2 signatures, 4 names, 20-plus years of marriage between us reduced to stamped paper and a file number. Gavin lost half his assets, most of his reputation, and whatever pride he had left. Rumor was he sold the big house, unloaded the country club membership, and took some quiet consulting role in another state. New city, same man, different people to fool. Melissa moved into a small apartment off a busy road. No gated community, no German SUV in the driveway. Just a compact car, a balcony that faced a parking lot, and an office job where she answered to a woman younger than she was. Me? I packed up the old house, kept what was mine, and moved in with Izzy to a place not far from downtown. A modest home with a small backyard, a creaky wooden porch, and enough space for both of us to breathe. I left my old company and joined a small tech startup where my ideas actually mattered. No corner office, no title chase, just work I was good at, and people who respected it. Funny how the man who once had everything ended up with almost nothing, and the man who'd been treated like nothing finally had enough. Our evenings look different now. No pretending for guests, no silent dinners in big, echoing rooms. Just the two of us on the back porch, wood under our feet, a couple of cheap chairs, and the kind of quiet that doesn't feel heavy anymore. One night, late summer, we sat out there with the porch light on and the rest of the neighborhood fading into crickets and distant traffic. Izzy had her knees pulled up, glass of wine in her hand, hair down for once. "Do you ever think about the what-ifs?" she asked. "Like, if none of this had happened, if they hadn't cheated?" "Yeah," I said. "Sometimes I wonder if we'd have ever met like this, without all the wreckage." She was quiet for a second, then smiled a little. "When I first saw you at that cafe," she admitted, "I didn't think I'd end up liking you. Not like this." I let that sit in the air between us. "I wasn't looking for perfect," I said. "Just real." She turned her head, met my eyes, and there was nothing polished or guarded left. "Then I guess we're both done pretending," she said. We sat there in the warm light, two people who'd been lied to, finally choosing each other, not to get even, but because this time, it was finally real. Sometimes on quiet nights, I think about the man I was a year ago. I see him clearly, the quiet IT guy who stayed late, fixed servers, came home, paid the bills, mowed the lawn every Saturday, and thought that was enough to keep a life together. A man who confused stable with safe and safe with right. I lived for security, not truth. If something felt off, I smoothed it over. Told myself I was overreacting. Told myself a good husband doesn't doubt his wife. And here's what I need you to hear. I don't blame myself for trusting her anymore. Trusting your wife doesn't make you weak. That's what a good man does. Where I would have failed myself is if I'd stayed there, if I'd found the truth and still chosen the lie just because it was familiar. These days, when I look in the mirror, I don't see the guy who got cheated on. I see the guy who refused to abandon himself twice. A man can live without a lot of things, money, status, the big house, but he can't live without respect, especially his own. I'll be honest with you. At the start, I thought the goal was simple: destroy Gavin, blow up his image, his career, his perfect little world, make him feel even a fraction of what he'd made me feel. And yeah, watching him lose his throne had its moments. I won't lie. But somewhere between the gala, the boardroom, the divorce papers, and that porch light in the backyard, I realized something. Getting even wasn't the win. Walking away with my self-respect, my peace, and a woman who shared my values, that was. The real revenge wasn't the article, or the HR investigation, or the stock price dipping. The real revenge was building a life he could never buy, a life where I sleep at night, where I don't have to check someone's phone to know where I stand, where I'm not begging for scraps of affection from someone who's already looking over my shoulder. If you're listening to this and you've been where I was, hear me. You don't have to burn your life to the ground for someone who won't even hold a match for you. Save the fire for building something that's truly yours. If you've ever felt like the safe option, this part is for you. The guy who pays the bills on time, who fixes the leak, changes the oil, shovels the driveway, who keeps the house running so everyone else can chase whatever they're chasing. They'll call you steady, reliable, boring, if they want to hurt you. Let me say this as plain as I can. There is nothing mediocre about being the man who shows up. Getting cheated on doesn't make you a loser. It doesn't erase the years you carried more than your share. It just exposes who they are. Don't beg for love from someone who doesn't respect you. Don't twist yourself into knots trying to be enough for a person who's already decided they want more than truth. If any of this sounds like your life, if you've been the background character in your own story, sitting there with your chest caved in, wondering what the hell happened, I get it. I've been you. So what do you do when your whole life falls apart? Here's what I did, and what I'd do again. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't picked up her phone that night, if I'd rolled over at 2:47 a.m., told myself it was just work, and gone back to sleep. If I'd kept swallowing that sick feeling in my gut every time she said late meeting or big presentation. I probably would have kept living in that safe house full of quiet lies. Probably would have kept patching a marriage that had already flatlined while she chased the next rung on Gavin's ladder. Maybe Gavin would have gotten bored eventually. Maybe he'd have traded her in for some younger protege, and she'd have walked out anyway, just later, after a few more years of me bleeding slowly instead of all at once. What I know for sure is this: I never would have met Izzy the way I did. Never would have seen myself clearly enough to walk away. Never would have learned that I could lose everything I thought I needed and still be okay. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to see what was killing you. So that's the arc. From a buzzing phone at 2:47 a.m., to a ballroom full of whispers, to a boardroom where a king lost his crown, to a quiet back porch where I finally sleep at night. If you strip everything else away, my story comes down to 3 things every man needs. Safety. For years I broke my back to keep a roof over our heads. Now I keep something more important safe. Myself. Love. I went from begging to be chosen by someone looking over my shoulder, to being with a woman who stands next to me because she wants to, not because it looks good on paper. Respect. I was the safe option, the guy she thought she could walk over. Now I know my own worth, with or without anyone else's approval. You don't need power or titles. You need peace, respect, and someone who means it. If you've ever been where I was, tell me in the comments. How did you get back up? What did you learn? Hit like, subscribe if this hit home, and share this video with a man who needs the reminder. And if you think this is where it ends, you've never seen what happens when a man truly knows his worth.